And so what happens is you create a way of life in the community where change is rewarded. And so what you can do in a group especially is say, look at the problems that people have and the way they used to solve them, which in fact was never really solving them. Taking drugs is not really solving the problem, it's just burying it for a day or two. Being violent isn't solving a problem, it's just expressing it. And for the individual to look at his most fundamental difficulties, it's very hard.
All I want is to settle down in one place and to just live a normal life, get in with people that are decent and don't get in trouble. Just, and, you know, don't be straight all the time, but, you know, don't get into any police trouble or anything. And just live a normal life and just keep out of trouble and just be happy.
Can you tell us a normal life? Tell us what...
Well, not get into trouble all the time and...
Okay,
well, it is normal really, but still.
What do you mean by being straight?
Well, just not doing nothing wrong or anything and just...
Why not?
Because it gets me in bloody trouble and sitting here talking like this all the time.
The step from factory floor to office I think was probably the most difficult. I asked where I was working if I could move into the offices, and the sort of questions that were asked me were, how many GCEs have you got? And eventually, after a lot of pushing, they finally said, well, no, there isn't a place for you. So the time was coming up to when I was 21, when the apprenticeship would finish, and people kept saying, well, no, you won't leave, you'll be just the same. We've heard all this before. But the day before I was 21, I left, and strangely enough, I've been mixing with pacifist people, and I went to work at the Ministry of Defence. And the only job I could get was as a clerical assistant, just filling in bits of paper. But it was as though a trapdoor had opened. I was up in the air. The other escape route, yeah, that was from the drudgery, was the football team. For some reason, Derby, or the people in Derby, have got a tradition about football. It's like an inner compulsion, it flows in their blood. I mean, when you grow up, what happens is your family, they knit you black and white scarves or black and white pom-pom hats. And sort of the names of the heroes roll off the tongue. That sounds like something from a Bob Dylan song, I think. But what happens is now, for instance, Derby County, the football team, are considered a good one. The football they produce is pure, it's cream-like, it's almost poetic. And that is since Brian Clough has come to Derby. But when I used to be there, the football team were languishing at the bottom of the second division. And what happens is that we just used to go on a Saturday for this sort of communion. I don't know if you know that much about football, but you know, but for many people, it just gives them a sort of freedom that they're unable to grasp at the rest of the time. I suppose I rave on a lot about the football team, but to me it meant a lot. It meant that one could go back to the factory floor and discuss the last week's match until Wednesday, and then from Thursday onwards discuss the forthcoming match on the Saturday. And at least that took one's mind off the crippling emotional effect that being an appendage to the machine had on you. I think lots of people still do that in Derby, and that's their only way of getting freedom. I really believe that. I think in many ways I do see that other people in this community have similar struggles to the one I went through. I think in many ways it was much easier for me. It seems to me anyway that it's much easier to overcome a barrier if it's outside you. And I was lucky in as much that I was born into a working class, and the barriers which prevented me getting any kind of fulfilment were outside me.